So basically, I wrote this. I'll send you a copy of this book, Who Stole My Pension? But the American person, the American worker who thinks they're in a capitalist society, there's been a shell game. It's been shifted. They've gone from shareholder to stakeholder, which I call Marxism or wokeism. And the American worker is getting screwed again. Hello, Robert Kiyosaki. This is the Rich Dad Radio Show, and we have probably, I would say, I'm guessing, but all my experience, all the years I've been doing this program, the most important show of all. And our guest today is Jared Teach. And Jared, you meet the nicest people at Hillstone's bar. So I'm there standing at Hillstone's talking to my friend Sal DeCiccio, and he introduces me to you, and I had no idea who Sal. I didn't know who you were. So then I got your data. I'm going, holy mackerel! So really quickly, what interested me is that you work with Vivek Ramasay. Or how do you pronounce his name? Is Borchin Kiyosaki.
Yeah, Vivek Ramaswamy. Yep.
Right. And did you work with him?
Oh, yeah. So he's a co-founder of our asset management group. We had the opportunity to speak on a weekly basis for the most part in meetings, et cetera, until he had the opportunity to have his message pulled up by the GOP. And he's an incredible human. And obviously had the opportunity to run for president. And now we see what he's doing with Elon Musk. And so since he ran for president, I haven't had the opportunity to speak with him as much, but he's certainly friendly to our firm and a lot of folks at the office. Still see him.
All I heard was that he was a billionaire, and now he and Trump and Musk are working together. But until I met you, Jared, I had no idea who he was or who you are and what you guys are working for. So we're all kindred spirits. So just my background here is this is a Marine Huey helicopter, and I flew these for the U.S. Marine Corps in Vietnam. And so the reason this is important is because some of you know who followed Rich Dad is I don't speak out against it, but I don't use financial planners. I'm a capitalist. I can put my own deals together. I've taken companies public and things like this. So I stay independent, should I say. And the game behind me, Jared, is how I teach capitalism. And it's the only game that it's basically a monopoly with a financial statement is what it is. And as you know, we have no financial education in schools. My friend Sal, he introduced me to Jared, and Jared's telling me about Vivek, and Vivek is on Trump's staff, and Trump and I have written 2 books together. And so I was more interested in Vivek. Now I'm more interested in Jared because what you sent me here is some of the most disturbing paperwork I've ever seen. Like I said, I fought communism, but communism has taken over America. So I want to quickly go into as best I can. You're talking something about shareholder capitalism versus stakeholder. Would you mind going into that and how this whole thing shapes up under Vivek and your funds? Strive, please.
Yeah, I'll be as brief as possible. So first off, we got to give a definition behind shareholder and stakeholder capitalism. So shareholder capitalistic values are exactly what we know American capitalism to be. A corporation's job is to return as much capital to the shareholders, the true owners of their company, as possible.
Right.
Stakeholder capitalism is this. It is, yes, a corporation needs to return as much capital to their shareholders, but also it needs to take into consideration every person that touches their company as a stakeholder. So, for instance, Chevron, they would not only have to pay the shareholders back, but they would also have to make sure that the HVAC gentleman in Denmark or the lawyer in Paris or the farmer in South Africa, whatever the case might be, are all squared away and not impacted by what Chevron does as a company. And whether you believe that's stakeholder. That's stakeholder.
Stakeholder.
Right. And whether you believe the value system for the person in Denmark, Paris, or South Africa is correct or not is not the question you should be asking. It's how much money are you as Chevron spending to make them happy, because that reduces the capital they get back to the shareholder. In the United States, the shareholder, we have laws. It's called fiduciary sole interest law. And you have to return as much as you can and do what's best and put them first since they're the owners of the companies. And
And
we,
then you sent me this here, and that's shareholder, and that's stakeholder.
yes,
So another thing, I didn't know all this, Jared, until I started reading your documents here. But this comes from that, what's his name? Klaus Schwab of Davos.
yeah. So where you really saw a divergence take place between the United States and European investing is early 1970s. We follow the United States, Milton Friedman, who won a Nobel Prize for economics based on his belief in free markets, but also shareholder capitalistic values. On the other side is Klaus Schwab, who wrote the Davos Manifesto in 1973 and is in favor of stakeholder capitalism. And what you saw was Europe started going down that road. So if you actually look over the last 40 years or darn near there, what you can see is shareholder capitalistic values. Let's use the S&P 500 versus European stakeholder capitalistic values. I mean, in the Eurostock 600, you'll see an annual outperformance of about 3.45% annually, which is incredible when you start compounding that. And like we spoke about earlier, if we're really serious about retirement in the United States, we have got to get back to shareholder capitalistic values and push away from ESG and DEI, who, when it first started, might sound like a wonderful idea. Everyone wants equality. Everyone wants a better earth for their children. But at the same time, it has been hijacked as now as Trojan horse for a lot of social and political events that are harming companies.
Right. So the shareholders, it's like if I'm an investor in a company, I'm being ripped off by the fund managers and things. I don't is beyond me. It's this to me smacks of simple terms, Marxism. Where it's not capitalism anymore; it's Marxism.
And that's why we need to return it to capitalism. That's why I joined Strive. I'm from Kansas originally, and my father, he didn't graduate high school. I mean, he's your blue collar middle class American. And what takes place is he asked me what I'm doing. I'm telling him I work for Strive, and he's like, "How do you help me with retirement?" I explain what's taking place, and he sits there and he goes, "Let me get this straight. Every time that there's a tax change in this country, who gets kicked in the teeth? It's the middle class. I'm a blue collar worker. I'm being told to save, invest for retirement. And then when you tell me to save and invest for retirement, I find out these asset managers are taking my retirement dollars and going pushing their pet projects in these boardrooms." Yeah, that is correct.
So they're stealing retirees or the employees' retirement.
Because of the SEC in 2001, after Enron, when you put your money with a money manager, you forfeit your proxy vote to that asset manager, whether it's BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, et cetera, and the entire industry. And so they do have the ability to vote what they believe is best for fiduciary sole interest law. What is interesting is how that game has changed. And so a decade ago, less than 1% of C-suite executives and board members had some sort of their compensation tied to ESG, DEI, social, political agenda. Today, 75% of them do when it comes to the companies within the S&P 500. That is what is concerning because it's not a play for climate change or improvement, I should say, or a play for equality. It is a greed play so they can hit their bonuses. And that is at the expense of shareholders.
So I'm gonna keep it in simple, rich dad terms. They went woke on us, and as they say, you go woke, you go broke. But you also said that this was stakeholder is more European retirement or financial planning, and shareholder is more American. And you're saying that America has shifted from shareholder to stakeholder, which is a European. And Volkswagen's closing two of its factories. Europe's in serious trouble. And it's because of this guy, Klaus Schwab, and woke capitalism that's now taken over America. Is that basically, I'm putting it in my vocabulary.
Yes, that is correct. This really started to kick off um, after 2008 when there was a group called Occupy Wall Street. And they were upset They don't know why they're upset, but they kind of had a reason why. We bailed out the banks and really didn't have a backup plan what they should be doing with those dollars. And so Wall Street had a really big black eye and they wanted to prove their image. And so they're able to do that through some European movements through ESG. And so then you started seeing, oh, there's money to be made here. And it started to tick up, tick up, tick up. And then about a decade ago, the state of California and the state of New York pension plans said, hey, if you want us to invest in your asset management, your mutual fund, or your whatever, you need to sign this CA 100, the Climate Act 100. Fast forward a decade, and here we are. And so it's pretty interesting. And it is, you keep on pulling on that string and you'll see where it all goes. So,
Okay, so again, using my vocabulary, what I call woke is called ESG, environmental, social, governance. And then DEI, I changed the letters around to DIE. That's diversity, inclusion, equality.
equity. Since the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action due to the Fair Admissions versus Harvard case in 22, what you found is, even though that's in academia, it is now coming to corporate America. And lawsuits are up, numbers between 10 to 15%, from what I understand, with current employees of companies saying, hey, I was passed over for this promotion because of the pigment on my skin. Now what are we doing here? And so now there's ramifications taking place where those lawsuits coming up because they enacted DEI. And so that'll be really interesting to follow over the next 5 or 10 years.
So basically, I wrote this, I'll send you a copy of this book, Who Stole My Pension? But the American person, the American worker who thinks they're in a capitalist society, there's been a shell game, it's been shifted. They've gone from shareholder to stakeholder, which I call Marxism or wokeism. And the American worker is getting screwed again at the top.
And that is evident by, in 2019, 181 United States CEOs signed at the Business Roundtable a pledge to move from shareholder capitalistic values, which we've always known as a winner in our country, to stakeholder capitalism. And that is infuriating.
And your company is called Strive, but you sent me this paperwork here. It's Southwest Airlines, McDonald's, and Starbucks. I mean, you can't get more American than that. But you're saying Southwest, McDonald's, and Starbucks are ripping off their workers.
So let's talk about Southwest really quick, because that's a really interesting story and how we work within the boardrooms with clients' dollars to push back on these agendas. And so in 2022, Southwest Airlines had arguably the worst year for any American airlines in history. Their stock price down between 25 to 40%, et cetera. During the holiday season in 2022, I got the last flight 3 days delayed from San Diego to Denver on Christmas Eve. A lot of folks didn't have the opportunity to make their flights. They spent the holidays or Christmas in an airport. Southwest canceled over 16,000 flights. They've been told for years you need to build out a better infrastructure from a tech standpoint, and they refuse to do so. But what is interesting is, because they canceled 16,000 flights, their carbon emissions dropped. And so their C-suite executives and others received bonuses, large bonuses, for hitting their ESG metric, while the stock was floundering and shareholders were left holding the bag.
They got a bonus for hitting ESG, environmental, social, government, but capitalism took the hit. They were not profitable.
Correct. You know, another story in that is Starbucks. So Starbucks, when they filed their annual report in 23, they use the name China approximately 6 times, but they want to, from my understanding, build 9,000 stores by 2025 in China. Well, there's a lot of geopolitical risks. They are adversaries of ours. And what's interesting is, when Russia invaded Ukraine in early 2022, Starbucks shut down over 700 stores. So if China decides to bring a military into Taiwan, are you going to shut down 9,000 stores? And how's that going to affect the shareholder? But they don't want to talk about that. Additionally, their CEO had a 10% kicker bonus to DEI metrics. And we had a conversation with them saying, hey, you saw what just happened in academia. Supreme Court just struck down affirmative action. This is coming to corporate America. So you better be ready because there's going to be some issues here. And they didn't particularly like us for that. And what ended up happening is they dropped that to 3% because they see the writing on the
So,
wall that there is a reversal here. So,
so you guys talk to Starbucks because they're hitting their DEI, I call DIE for die metrics, but they were basically, I mean, what they're doing is horrible. I mean, to me, what happens to America is capitalism is leaving us. I mean, it left us to go to China. And when I see buildings emptying out and all that, to me, that's capitalism leaving. It's the same thing that's going on today in Europe. I think Volkswagen is shutting down one or two or three of their factories. Capitalism's leaving. And it goes back to Klaus Schwab and the Davos thing and all this. We've got to take care of the shareholder. So that's why with this book here, which I'll send you, is Who Stole My Pension? I'm of that age group right now, is they can't afford to retire. You know what I mean? There's no money there for them. So it goes, basically they just ripped off their pensions. And the American worker sits there with their little 401k saying, I'm protected.
yeah. And, that's a huge issue. When you look at a lot of these pension plans, whether it's a county or a state, it's you have wonderful folks that work at CalPERS, as portfolio managers, analysts, etc. But they've got to follow their investment policy statements, what they're told to do, where they can invest. And so when politicians have the ability to form those investment policy statements, listen, a politician sometimes probably can't spell ESG, but by God, they know you can get them a vote. Well, that's a problem. And so, and we're again, the public's left on the hook for it. So it's something that we are pushing back against. And the first thing that's interesting is we've educated a lot of folks, and so we are seeing this kind of curtail. People are starting to rename ESG or DEI. Larry Fink was in the news earlier this year saying, "I'm never going to use those phrasings again because it's become political." It's like, how'd that happen? So he wants to sit there and maybe we'll use conscientious capitalism. So you do play whack-a-mole. You're also hearing, hey, they're starting to wind down their votes on ESG and DEI in these boardrooms. That's simply not true. What's happening is if you already passed it and voted it through, it's not going to be on the ballot the next year. You're not going to vote for it again. So now the second stage, the first stage was to educate folks. The second stage, Robert, is incredibly important. It's going to take a while, is to get people to go ahead and admit they're wrong, repeal these votes, put it back at a shareholder proposal in these boards, and vote it out. And that's going to take some doing.
So, Jared, before going any further, how do people get more information from you that you're allowed to put out? I mean, this stuff is dangerous.
Yeah,
I was reading it going, oh my God, this
I
is
would highly
dangerous.
recommend going to strive.com, reading our white papers, watching our videos. There's even a portion on corporate governance showing how we vote. You can type in any ticker that we have some sort of investment in, and you can see how we voted. You're not going to see that on other websites. It's our goal to be able to pull back the curtain of what's taking place in these boardrooms. That is the number one goal. So strivefunds.com, strive.com. We certainly have different investment options. We'd love to have a conversation with anyone for.
So we come back. We'll be right back. We'll take a short break. But I want strive.com. Like the saying goes, go woke, go broke. Europe's going broke. We now have shareholder or stakeholder capitalism in Europe, but it's now in America. And the reason I wore my flight jacket today is because, I flew these in Vietnam, and my classmates went to fly for United Airlines. And you know what happened to their pension? It got stolen too. And my classmates, thank God I didn't stay in, but they don't have a pension. And these are Marine pilots, Air Force pilots, and all this. And then they all flew for the airlines, and their pensions got stolen. And so that's why with this book here, it's called "Who Stole My Pension" with Ted Siddell. I'm talking here about the end of capitalism. This is when they steal capitalism. And they're stealing it through our pensions, which is why I wrote this book here, Who Stole My Pension? So we come back, Jared. I want you to wake people up. I I talk to people and they said, what's going to happen? Like, I'm an old guy, I'm 77. What's going to happen when your dad moves in with you because he's got no pension? And people don't know that it's coming. So we'll be right back with Jared Teach. He's with Strive, and please go to their website and read what they have to say. It's disturbing. We'll be right back.
Hi, folks. Rich Bontrager for the Rich Dad team. And let me tell you, I couldn't be more thrilled about the landslide win. Donald Trump is back in office, and we've got both the House and the Senate in our corner. That's huge. But let's get real for a second. While the victory is sweet, the challenges we face as a nation are nothing short than monumental. We've just come out of 4 years of economic chaos. Think about it. The dollar has lost value. Inflation runs rampant. Interest rates are through the roof. Our national debt is out of control, and wars rage around the globe. Donald Trump has inherited an economy that's a total mess, and the burden to rebuild it is immense. Now, let's be honest, this isn't going to get fixed overnight. And even as we work to restore order, the cost of rebuilding will be steep. Printing more money to address the issues, ongoing assaults from BRICS nations on the dollar, and even climbing national debts are massive concerns. Here's the deal. Your savings aren't in the clear. They're vulnerable to these uncertainties. And let me tell you, gambling with your wealth right now is not an option. In these last few years, that taught us anything that we need to take action, proactive steps to protect what we've worked so hard to earn. That's why Rich Dad is partnering with Allegiance Gold, a company that we trust to protect your financial future. Gold and silver are timeless ways to hedge against economic chaos. They're not just investments, they're peace of mind for your wealth. Here's the kicker. When you start your investment with Allegiance Gold today, you'll even get free silver as part of their exclusive offer. Just mention Robert sent you, and they'll take great care of you. Folks, now is not the time to sit on the sidelines. Act today. Secure your wealth. Go to protectwithrobert.com or call 844-3-ROBERT. That's 844-376-2378. And let them help you get started today.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Radio Show. Today, I think we have the most important Rich Dad show ever, but it's about how our capitalism, our wealth, is being stolen by our financial planners or the financial institutions of our country. And that's why I wrote this book here, Who Stole My Pension, is because my generation, it was in 1974 that the 401k came out. It was called the Employee Retirement and Security Act and all this stuff. But as a pilot, my classmates had their pensions stolen when they were flying for United and things like this. They don't have any pensions. And so if you're an old guy like me, you don't have any pensions. But if you're a younger person, you know, your dad and mom may be moving in with you when their pensions are gone. But we're talking about one of the biggest cash heists going. So once again, Jared, let's take it from there. What's a stakeholder, which is European, and shareholder, which is American? And European capitalism is in trouble. Germany, France, England, they're gone.
Yeah, a perfect example of how this is being utilized is actually Chevron. We talked about it earlier. So Chevron had self-inflicted wounds take place within their boardroom, and they self-imposed Scope 3 emissions. This is a perfect example of how stakeholder capitalism works. So Scope 3 is very interesting. So what it is let's do Scope 1 first. So if you're an oil company and you drill and you make a mess, I hope you get fined to oblivion. Whatever you can legally be fined, you should, because you made a mess of our beautiful earth. Scope 2 is, all right, you drilled, you did just fine, but you pass it down the chain. You sold your oil down to midstream. Well, that midstream folks, they made a mess with your oil. You know, I still think that if Chevron was in that case, they should be responsible for some of that, because what type of mavericks are you signing contracts with that are not safe? But Scope 3 is insane. Scope 3 says that you've got to capture enough carbon to be carbon neutral. Well, Scope 3 also says that your pizza delivery person that goes and fills up the gas tank at Chevron gas station somehow Chevron, the company, is responsible for that person driving a 1998 Civic and allowing carbon to go into, obviously, the air. And that's impossible, but it is a way to fine and fee these corporations to death. And that actually came from that whole Scope 3 initiative, started with an activist group from an HVAC gentleman in Denmark. And so that is that Scope 3 stakeholder capitalist values that push down and reduce the return that the companies can give their shareholders.
The shareholder gets screwed. Is the
That's
rich
exactly
dad
right.
term.
Yeah,
The
that's
shareholder gets screwed
correct.
because of Marxism. And the reason, like we had, I read this book here by R. Buckminster Fuller. It was called The Grunch of Giants, and it's how our cash is stolen via how wealth is stolen via our money. It's R. Buckminster Fuller created the geodesic dome, so he kind of twigged me. And the reason for years, I don't trust financial planners at all. Anytime they tell me, "Don't worry, U.S. bonds are safe," I said, "There's nothing safe out there." So I became a gold bug, a silver bug, and today I'm a Bitcoin bug because it's something the U.S. government cannot print. I just stay away from them. Jared, I've never trusted those bastards. So when I met you at Hillstones, I'm going, "Oh my God!" And then I read your data. It's even worse than I thought. I thought. And I'm talking to my friend here, Ted Siddell, who stole my pension, and CalPERS. I mean, the shareholders of CalPERS are asking him to go in to investigate California pension. Would you mind saying who CalPERS is for people who not heard of them?
It's the California pension retirement system. It's pretty straightforward. It is your public workers in the state of California. So your police, your fire, your public safety. Uh, that's just a few. It's huge. It's massive. It is the largest pension program in the United States.
Yeah. And so when I met Jared, the other night, we were talking about Vivek, and I said, "Well, is Vivek going to hang out with Trump because he's going after the same people?"
Yeah, he is the smartest human I've ever had the opportunity to meet and work beside, work with, I should say. He's above me. But what's wonderful is his ability to connect with people. He asks real questions, and you don't have to agree. You don't have to be odd or mean about it. Let's get to the root of the problem, figure it out. And there is a solution to this. Capitalism is not dying. We're going to fix it. In fact, it is no different than the SEC and government fixing what happened with Enron and forcing asset managers to take on the voting responsibilities. They can do the same thing right here, right now with the green smuggling issue. We talked about greenwashing in the past. Green smuggling is the big one. And that's how you can change this issue where, frankly, a large asset manager can take, let's say they have 5% or 10% of their overall assets in impact investing products, ESG, DEI centric. And then if you don't want that, you can still invest with that asset manager, that just the regular, I don't care, a balanced fund or a growth fund. Well, what happens is you think that the 95% votes here go that way. And it's just straight for fiduciary best, whatever the company can do. And the 5 or 10% vote for climate issues, whatever. No, what's happening is all the money is going into this, and then the votes are going out the same. And so Congress or SEC could easily pass a law saying, you know what, you've got to vote with what your prospectus follows for those percentages.
You're supposed to vote for the shareholder, not the pizza delivery boy. So let me ask this question: if I've never trusted financial planners, I just don't trust them. You become a financial planner in 70 days. I mean, Jared, how long have you been studying? How long have I been studying? And here's another friend of mine, Jim Rickards. He wrote Money GPT. He's talking about how AI is going to bring down the banking system, but it's really the bond system. And every time these financial planners tell me, "Oh, it's safe as U.S. bonds," I'm going, "You got to be kidding me. China just stopped buying bonds, you idiots." Financial planners are some of the most stupid people I've ever met my whole life. They mean well. They mean well. But in 70 days, they're planning your life for you, and they don't know anything. So what would you say? How would a person with a 401k, let's say, or an IRA, what can they do to check back on their financial planner? what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would certainly have a conversation with financial planners, and not all are created equal. There's some really good ones out there, but there's
I
also
understand.
some that also, to your point, are very young and they haven't experienced that. This is what's beautiful, and if I'm the public, I find it so interesting in our particular industry, the finance industry, where you can have a large IQ, you can go to the most wonderful, prestigious university, but if you haven't had the experience and actually watched how this plays out, and watched an '08 or a '98 or whatever the case might be, it's something that this is a really unique. I'd ask for experience in our industry when you work with a financial advisor, more so than anything, and then be on their butt. They're better for it. So that's my two bullet points I'd give right out of the gates.
Yeah. So Jared, that's great information. I also think now I understand why Trump is pushing Bitcoin. He's now the Bitcoin president. His son Eric and I will be teaching together soon. And Eric's saying that we're not saying this. I will make no recommendations, but Eric Trump was saying, Bitcoin is going to 1 billion. But I think it's the influence of what Donald Trump knows is going on inside the retirement industry. And I think I feel so blessed to have met you the other night. Because I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't know how bad it was. I knew it was bad, but not this bad. Or they could be that corrupt. So we don't make any recommendation. We're not saying buy Bitcoin and all that, although I like this stuff. I just like it because the government can't print it. I stay away from my government. Once again, could you explain how people can get more information from your organization?
Absolutely. We encourage everyone to go to strive.com or strivefunds.com. Either one will work. Strive.com will have a little more in regards to what we do in a corporate governance arena. And what I mean by that is show you how we're using your dollars in these boardrooms and making sure that it is being voted correctly with these proxy votes. And so that to me is instrumental in everything we stand for. Get back to Milton Friedman's Nobel Prize winning formula of shareholder capitalistic primacy. And
It's Milton Friedman versus Klaus Schwab of Davos.
yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, so Jared, I like your name, Jared Teach. You've taught a lot of people. There's a lot more to learn. But I'm just going to summarize it simply. You go woke, you go broke. So European is stakeholder capitalism. They're going broke right now. And America's going to go broke too. So that's why Vivek is with Elon Musk and Donald. And Eric Trump, my friend, and Don Jr. are promoting Bitcoin. You got to get away from Wall Street. So Jared, thank you. Let's do it again because there's so much more to learn. So thank you very much.
Robert, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we come back, I'll go quick summary. So again, we'll be right back. Jared, thank you. Thank you. So welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki. I want to thank Jared Teach, of Strive. This is a subject near and dear to my heart, who stole my pension. And the reason this is important to me is because my poor dad lost his pension also. And it sets the whole family up. So what Jared Teach was talking about is he's with Vivek and Sean, his name, Elon Musk and Trump are in Washington, D.C. now trying to straighten this whole go woke, go broke thing up. But we've had what Jared did and his information, please subscribe to his information, is basically Marxism has invaded our pension system, which is why I wrote this book here, Who Stole My Pension? So if you're an old guy like me with a 401k or an IRA, I would look into it. Or if you're a younger person with a parent counting on their 401k, this is serious stuff. Because America is broke enough, but we don't need to go woke and go broke on top of it. So thank you for watching the Rich Dad radio show or tuning into it. And I'll thank Jared Teach and Strive. And let's go Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Vivek. Let's straighten this country out.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.